Hi everybody, I'm Joker. It looks like you're trying to write a feature request on the Rec Room Canny. Maybe I can help you with that. Canny is the best place for people in the Rec Room community to make requests for features and activities and things inside Rec Room that they want the developers to see and think about and maybe act on. Now, discussion in the Rec Room Discord is always good and is always helpful. But if you do that, always make sure that somebody who's part of that discussion has gone on to Canny and actually made the request that people were talking about. Otherwise, the developers of Rec Room might not ever see that discussion and might not know that that's something the community wants. Also on Canny, there is a place to submit bug reports, and you can do that if you want, but I personally think that the bug reports channel on the Rec Room Discord is a better place to make bug reports. You can use the Rec Room bot, the Rec bot, to submit a lot of information, and it's more visible to the community and to the developers, I think. So if you find yourself on Canny with a feature request that you want to make, you can start out. You'll see a page like this. You'll go into the category that you want, and you start out on the left-hand side here with the title box. And you click in there, and you're going to start entering a title that should be a little bit descriptive of the feature request that you want. Now, the most important thing that I want you all to get from this tutorial is that when you start typing in feature requests, when you start with the title and also the description, when you're typing it into Canny, it automatically does a real-time search, and it will tell you if there's already a feature request that's similar or maybe exactly the same as what you want. I can give an example here. If you're going into the creative tools part of Canny and you type in the word glass, because you want to ask for glass to be able to create invisible walls or glass in Rec Room, you'll see already, now that I've typed that word in, there are already at least 3 requests for glass that are eventually going to get merged together. So please, when you go to make a feature request on Canny, just make sure that as you're typing it in, you look at these suggested posts and see if there might already be one. And if you accidentally because if you make a redundant request, it splits up the discussion. It sort of makes it messier, and there's more the developers have to deal with, and it's less likely that what you post is going to be visible because it's more likely to be ignored for one of the requests that already exists. Instead, what you should do is vote on the duplicate request, maybe go into the comments section and add a little bit about what you specify what you want if it's a little bit different. So the other thing is, when you're writing your request, if it happens to be a good one or a new one, make sure you use a lot of keywords in the title that you're writing. Try to keep it short and as descriptive as possible. Make sure that the reader, when they read the title, they already have a pretty good idea of what you're going to be asking for in that request. So that's just a good example. Now, the next tip I want to give everybody is when you're making a request on Canny, just make sure that it's in the right category. I spend a lot of time on the creative tool. So here are the categories. This is the front page of the Rec Room Canny, and these are the 9 categories that you can make Canny requests in, or posts. I spend a lot of time looking at the feature requests for creative tools and the feature requests for general Rec Room stuff. And what I've noticed is I see a lot of people with requests for creative tools in Rec Room. They end up going into the general category and accidentally posting that kind of stuff in there. So now, this is an example of that. This is a request for something to do with gizmos, but it's up in the general category. Now, that probably means that this is eventually going to get moved over to creative tools. The other thing is, when this is being written, there might be something that's already similar to this in the creative tools category, but the author wouldn't get to see it because when they were typing it in, the real-time search missed everything in the creative tools. So just make sure that when you're making requests, it's in the correct category. The next tip I want to give everybody, this is something I see happen a little too often, is when you're writing a request, keep it short in the first place, but also think about the request that you're asking, and if it's for multiple things that are kind of different from each other, don't ever be afraid to split up your request into multiple requests. There's no reason not to do that. This is an example right here. this is actually 5 different requests. We're all glad the author took the time to come through and put these things on Canny, but the problem with it is, as you can see, if I scroll down the page here, yeah, there are 5 different requests. They're all a little bit related, but they're still for 5 different things. Now, the problem with this, there's a couple problems with this. First of all, if somebody wants, Canny is based on voting from the community. You can come in here, and if you read this and you decide that it's also something you want, you can go up here and click and vote on it. The problem is, if there are a bunch of requests all listed under one request, it's hard to know what you're voting for. For example, I might want number 1, but I don't want number 2. So I can't decide whether or not I want to vote for this. If this is split up into 5 different requests, then I can pick and choose which of those requests I do want to vote for. The other thing is, when you have multiple different requests listed under one request, it sort of makes the discussion. The discussion can't be quite as focused. People can go down in the comments section and talk about what they think is good and what they think is bad about the request, but it's harder to do when there's so much being said here and so many different things to talk about. If it's 5 different requests, then you can say exactly what you want about exactly the request that you care about. So when you write a Canny request, please just remember to never be afraid to split them up into a bunch of requests. It makes it easier in a lot of different ways. And that sort of is related to, I think, the last tip that I have, which is try very hard so when you're writing the quest, start out with the title, and then you're going to have the opportunity to go and write a description. And this is where people add more details and explain more about what they want. But please try to keep the description pretty short. Try to limit it to saying maybe like a few sentences, a couple paragraphs. Try to the first thing you should say is what you want, like what the thing you want to change is. And then after that, say just a little bit about why you think it's important. This is an example. This is a request that I wrote. This mostly just describes exactly what I think should happen, and I don't even go that much into why. This is an example of just why I think it's important. If you're finding it difficult to keep the description short, you might consider writing a short description of what you want and then elaborating, as I've done in this request, down in the comments section. Because that's sort of what discussion is for. Discussion is for getting more details and talking more about what's important and why. And that's why after I wrote this, I went straight down and I added a little bit more. But the reason I really wanted to keep the request focused so that when people came in, they could very quickly get an idea of what was being talked about and very quickly decide whether or not they wanted to vote for it. If I'd put all that other stuff in here, it would have been more reading and people may not have really got the idea very well. So those are my tips for writing a good Canny report to get your voice heard and to get the developers knowing about what people want in Rec Room. Thanks for watching, guys.